and welcome. Welcome to this week's special. You know it all by now that this is a special that is brought to you in association with the MPL Sports Foundation. And today what we are going to do is focus on the Commonwealth Games. One of the two major multidiscipline events this particular year in 2022. So it's important that we focus on the Commonwealth Games and try and understand what the games are about, what it will mean for Indian athletes, how India should look about it, and the entire, the macro and the micro picture. So over the next few minutes, let's divide it. So how's the run order? Let's start with a brief history of the Commonwealth Games. What started it? How did it all happen? Why did it all happen in Hamilton in 1929-30? Then let's try and understand what impact India's independence had on the Commonwealth Games, if at all. Did the politics of Nehru, did how India evolved as a nation state have any significant impact on sport, and India's overarching presence in this part of the world, how did that impact the Commonwealth Games going forward? Part 3 is the standard of sport in the Commonwealth Games, how that changed over a period of time, and did that leave an impact on the future of the games as well? And finally, coming to Birmingham, how do I look at Birmingham based on the individual sports? So the first part is the history bit. You know, the Commonwealth Games actually started, obviously everybody knows, British Empire Games as the British Empire Games, and then subsequently became the British Empire and Commonwealth Games, and then the Commonwealth Games. It started in Hamilton, Canada in 1930, almost as a bit of a rival to the Olympic Games. Because what was happening was, if you read Coubertin's dispatches, if you read contemporary documents, from the 1910s, 15 period onwards, you will see the Olympic Games was gradually getting Americanized to a degree. The empire needed to hold on to its own placement, and the Commonwealth Games or the British Empire Games at that point in time became a forum, became a platform where the empire could strike back at the Americanization of the Olympic Games. So that's how the British Empire Games, if you see, the countries of empire came together to reassert their sporting dominance or dominance over world sport in a manner in 1929-30. Planning was very much on even during the Amsterdam Olympics, something that I have documented in my academic work earlier. So it was interesting. I mean, only a few people, few countries were asked to participate. They were paid for their voyage to go and participate in the first edition of the British Empire Games. The real change in the nature of the British Empire Games obviously happened post India's independence. Will India stay in the Commonwealth was the question that Indian policymakers, politicians had to answer, and Pandit Nehru obviously had his own take, and India becoming the big brother in Asia. The reason why India decided to stay as part of the Commonwealth seriously impacted the Commonwealth Games, and the stature of the Commonwealth Games obviously benefited. And if you see the way the 1958 Games in Wales, for example, you will see how this is getting played out. Fast forward, you know, from this period onwards, when you see Milkha Singh winning gold, for example, the standard at the Commonwealth Games was seriously high from the 1930s, 40s, 50s period. Gradually, and that's why when you celebrate medals, Milkha's medal, and some of the other medals of that period, really impactful performances from Indian athletes. From the 1970s, 80s onwards, if you see Edinburgh and Brisbane, etc., you see there is a dip, there is a gradual dip in terms of the standard of competition at the Commonwealth Games, and that is something that the Commonwealth Games is seriously having to grapple with as we speak, because without the sporting standard being that high, Pan Am, Asian Games, other regional games will obviously steal a march. Forget the Olympics. The Olympics is is a very different beast. But even regional games like the Asian Games and the other games will steal a march. That is something that the Commonwealth Games has to grapple with. And that brings me to Birmingham. You know, Birmingham, the real challenge will be, what is the standard? How does India grapple with this challenge? is a question that we must understand, because within a month of the Commonwealth Games will be the Asian Games, where esports will also be a part this time, and it's very important to see the vibrancy of the esport industry, and that's something to look forward to. Because I was having a chat with Vishwanathan Anand the other day, and he said during the pandemic the consumption of chess has grown manifold. The same has happened with esports. All of a sudden, a massive push. The size of the industry has become huge. Gaming and the impact on physical sport, because people taking to esport and then subsequently taking to physical sport is also on the rise, and that is now documented. That's part of the Asian Games. So within a month of the CWG is the Asian Games, and that's something Indian athletes will have to keep in mind. No shooting this year, no shooting. That means the medal tally might get impacted as far as India is concerned, because India wins a bag full of shooting medals at the Commonwealth Games. In some of the disciplines, the standard will be high again, very interesting. Hockey, India unfortunately is not sending its best teams, or might not send teams at all like they've said, because they are focusing on the Asian Games direct qualification. So that's something you have to keep in mind. Badminton, some really good players. There you would expect decent competition. You would expect golds from our boys and men and women. Started reasonably well. PV Sindhu, Indian Open, Lakshya Sen, Indian Open again. Some COVID cases there, but you would expect Kidambi Shrikant, Praneeth, and some of the others who finished 2021 on a high to do well. So badminton is something that's important. Obviously the other usual sports, the mainstream sports that wins India multiple medals at the Commonwealth Games, all of us will be focused on that. Athletics, the question, I was speaking to Anju Bobby George, whether Shaili Singh will be on show. Shaili will take a call whether to choose the World Junior Championships or to pick the Commonwealth Games. Again, a very important call. Will they field her at the senior level, and then can she go to the Asian Games? She will definitely be there at the Asian Games. So what will be the signature event? One of the signature events this time around, I would say, will be women's cricket, because India-Pakistan playing in the Commonwealth Games, the diaspora in Birmingham, the huge diaspora in Birmingham will give the Commonwealth Games more relevance, because the moment you add women's cricket, you add a significant chunk of the Indian population backing that sport, and then this size will give vibrancy to the Commonwealth Games, and the ICC still has not left hope of including cricket for the 2028 LA Games. So how they do this multidiscipline games, the Commonwealth Games with women's cricket, will be very important for the ICC as a pilot or as a case study going forward. And make no mistake, India-Pakistan has its own traction. So if you keep all of these things in mind, the addition of women's cricket in this time's Commonwealth Games makes a fundamental difference. I would watch out for every Indian athlete, the relatively younger ones more, because this is how they can become bigger stars, subsequently go on and perform at the Asian level at the Asian Games, and then obviously Paris being the ultimate crescendo in 2024. Birmingham, 28th of July to 8th of August. For the sake of the Commonwealth Games also, standard has to be higher. Organization has to be better. It has to have relevance. Politically, the Commonwealth has minor relevance now. The games are important for its survival. So I will be there. Revsportz will be there. We will bring you coverage from there, and try, for the sake of Indian athletics, it's very important, or Indian sport, it's very important that we are in the top 3, top 4, because without shooting, that is a challenge, but we've got to surmount that and be there. I hope you've enjoyed this particular episode on the Commonwealth Games, where I've given you the macro and the micro. Next week, I will be back with a special episode on the Asian Games. Thanks very much for watching.